Okay. It's a little bit more quiet tonight than it was this morning, but you all still just look good where you are, you know. Luke chapter 4 is where we will get our central theme and our kickstart. Luke chapter 4. So in Luke chapter 4, what we will do is begin reading in verse 40. Luke 4 and verse 40. Let's go ahead and finish the chapter. Just read from verse 40 to 44. And it says, Now when the sun was setting, all they that had any sick with diverse diseases brought them unto him. And he laid his hands on every one of them and healed them. And demons also came out of many, crying out and saying, Thou art Christ, the Son of God. And he, rebuking them, suffered them not to speak, for they knew that he was Christ. And when it was day, he departed and went into a desert place, and the people sought him and came unto him and stayed him, that he should not depart from them. And he said unto them, I must preach the kingdom of God to other cities also, for therefore am I sent. And he preached in the synagogues of Galilee. Okay, so I think it's pretty clear who is the main character of our short text that we just read together. Jesus is the character, the main central theme. Of course, he's the central theme of the whole thing, the whole book, the whole Bible. And this is very early in his ministry. Luke brings some of these details to our ears that we can learn from them and get some lessons, some lifestyle changes, if you will, based off of the way Jesus conducted himself while he was walking upon this earth in the flesh. He's in Capernaum. He's already been run out of town from Nazareth, where he grew up. He's already been run out of town. And Capernaum, for some reason, was more receptive to him. And we just read that they actually compelled him to stay. Hey, stay with us. And he says, no, I got to go. We just read that. And that's our overall situation. Right before this is when he heals Peter's mother-in-law. So that just gives you an overall idea of what's going on, just to get you up to speed on the text for this evening. And what I want to do is just give you a couple of things to think about, a couple of things to learn from out of this brief account. I love, first off, that these authors included some of these details, and one of the things that we can do is we can ponder and wonder what was the point of some of these details that we get. And the first one is in verse 40. Verse 40 kind of stands alone as an interesting detail, because whenever you read a lot of biblical literature, you have to take note of the fact that tons of details are left out. Just enormous amounts of details. And the reason why is really found in the end of the book of John, because John actually records that if we were to write everything that Jesus did, then the whole world couldn't contain the books that would be written. So whenever we read little bits and pieces like this, whenever you find details, there's a reason why they're there. We may not ever find some of the reasons why. It's one of those. It's fun to try to think about. It's fun to ponder. Fun to try to discuss and wonder about. But I do also believe that some of the things help us by meeting us where we are in the fact that we are human, and some of these things relate to our everyday life. So let's go to verse 40. Luke chapter 4 and verse 40. It says, "Now when the sun was setting," there's one detail. The sun was setting. Luke could have completely left that out and it would have been fine, don't you think? It really would have been fine. It's not like if he didn't point that out, we would all still be just doomed to damnation. So it's not like that contains the gospel message right there. But that detail has something for us. So the sun was setting. And as the sun was setting, all they that had any sick with diverse diseases brought them unto him. So, what we find here now is Jesus was very active, busy, day in and day out, working, teaching, and helping people. And in Capernaum at this time, word got around, the sun was going down, and it says that there were a lot of people bringing people to him. The friends, the family members, sick people, and they brought them to him for the purpose of healing these people. Now I'll just skip ahead to verse 42. It says, "And when it was day." Now it doesn't necessarily specify that he was working all night. However, I think it's pretty easy to conclude that he was working all night. Why else would Luke have included the time that the sun was setting? He was working, casting out demons, healing people, and then suddenly, verse 42, it just says, "And when it was day." Why would Luke include those two details? The whole reason why is because he wants us to know that Jesus was up all night helping people. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is one of those things about Jesus that is extremely impressive. He didn't have to. You know what I mean? Like, you really stop and think about it. He didn't have to do this. He literally came down from heaven to work all night, to help people. And I can guarantee you right now that it wasn't convenient, it wasn't easy, and he was still human, even though he was God in the flesh. So he was tired. So it reminds me of a couple of verses, and I'm just going to take you to a couple of them. So keep your bookmark in Luke chapter 4. We'll come back to that. But let's take a look at Ephesians chapter 5. Ephesians chapter 5. The Apostle Paul was somebody who had a similar work ethic. And he would encourage people to do similar things, and that is basically to stay on it, to stay active, to burn the midnight oil. Sometimes you don't do it every night. You can't do it every night. And we don't want to infer that Jesus did do that every single night. He had to get rest, of course, but he skimped on rest as well because that's who he was, especially when it was time to help somebody out. And so in Ephesians chapter 5, the Apostle Paul, if you look at the beginning of the chapter, he's starting to bring some major application into the ears of the Ephesian Christians, and he's giving a lot of generic advice and a lot of specific advice. And one of the things that he does is kind of like a peak generic like broad principle that he wants the Ephesians to live by, and it's verse 14. So in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 14, he says, "Wherefore he says, Awake thou that sleeps, and arise from the dead." He's quoting the Old Testament there, and he says, "And Christ shall give you light." So there's a certain attitude that Paul is trying to inspire his people to take right here. And then verse 15, he says, "See that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise." Now, to walk circumspectly is to like walk with an intense awareness. The word circumspect has the word circle in it. So it's like kind of walking with a keen awareness of your surroundings. There's definitely a very active thing happening in this statement right here. So, walk with intense purpose, walk with caution and awareness, not as fools, but as wise. And then he says in verse 16, redeeming the time because the days are evil. I think Jesus showed us exactly how he applied that in the text that we just read about him. He could have very easily said, "Hey, listen, people, the sun is setting and I'm getting tired." When the opportunity was there, when the people were coming to him, you know what he did? He stayed all night up with them, healing them. And the reason why was because the opportunity was there. They were bringing people to him. Now Nazareth, he left town when they gave him the boot when they were getting ready to kill him. He left town. Like Jesus made decisions, and he did make decisions based off of the people that were around him. In fact, he actually would leave Jewish jurisdiction just because the heat was turning up and they kept trying to kill him, and then sometimes he would leave town because they were going to try to make him to be some type of great leader to overthrow Rome and that kind of stuff. So he would just get out of the way, just get out of Dodge in those circumstances. But when the opportunity was there, Jesus did what he could and stayed up all night working. And Paul says to redeem the time because the days are evil. Now go with me over to 2 Timothy chapter 4. Some of you already know where I'm going with this. 2 Timothy chapter 4, Paul charges Timothy in this text. He doesn't charge him in the name of Caesar. He doesn't charge him by his own authority. If you take a look at 2 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 1, Paul says, "I charge thee therefore before God and the Lord Jesus Christ, who shall judge the quick and the dead at his appearing and his kingdom." That's what's at stake. I mean, that right there tells you exactly what's at stake. Why Jesus did what he did, why he would be willing to stay up all night sacrificing his health, because what's the best way to avoid sickness? Get plenty of rest. Jesus put his own flesh on the line. He put his own comfort on the line. He put his own convenience on the line because the quick and the dead are going to be judged. Jesus knew that. Paul knew it. And as a result of that, Paul charges Timothy in the name of Christ to preach the word. And this is verse 2, to preach the word, to be instant in season, out of season, reprove, rebuke, exhort with all longsuffering and doctrine. Now, in season, out of season, as long as you keep showing up to churches that give heed to this warning, you're going to be hearing this warning. You know what I mean? As long as you keep showing up, you're going to hear preachers say, this is telling Timothy, and by extension us, to constantly be preaching, to be looking for opportunity, in season and out of season. Like John just mentioned a moment ago, this is a season where people have their ears more perked to talk about Jesus, and that's a good thing. Doesn't have to be a bad thing. That is a good thing. But you know what? When everyone starts not having the ears perked, it's still appropriate to preach. It's still appropriate. And when the sun sets and it's inconvenient, it's still appropriate to preach the word and to seize the moment and the opportunity and to redeem the time, knowing that the days are evil. Go with me back to Proverbs chapter 20. I have a proverb I want to share with you. You know, I'm going to be honest with you right now. This sermon, for me, has some dissonance to it. This particular lesson that I am bringing to your ears is tingling my ears as well. And I'm going to tell you why I say that after we read Proverbs chapter 20 and verse 13. Now, remember, the Proverbs are like kind of single statements. Many of them are just single statements that have a deep meaning to get you to really think. It's not necessarily like always a literal thing, but it's to give you a principle to really truly live by. And Proverbs 20 and verse 13, I came across this not too long ago, and I says to myself, this is going to work pretty nice with what I'm talking about. It says, love, not sleep. It's already dissonant in my ears, man. And that's why I told you a second ago. It's not like to take it literal. It's nice to have good rest. That's not what he's saying. He's not saying, yo, when you're getting good rest, you needed to test that. You need to. No, no, no. It's good to get good rest. But here's the point that he's making. When it's time to wake up and get to work, wake up and get to work. When there's an opportunity before you, put sleep to the side and put the opportunity as your priority. Let's finish the verse. Love not sleep, lest you come to poverty. Open your eyes, and you shall be satisfied with bread. Now, there's a secular application here. However, the spiritual application is much, much more pressing, much more important. Love not sleep, lest you come to spiritual poverty. It is on a busy day, which happens. You know, we Americans, we get busy. We get very busy. And it's tempting to say to ourselves, man, I gotta get some rest. I gotta catch up on rest. It's very tempting. Very tempting as the sun is going down to start to, settle down and say, well, I was really busy today. I really just need to, wrap it up and get to sleep and skimp on prayer time and skimp on study time. But I tell you right now, it is way more valuable to sacrifice a half hour of sleep for a half hour of reading the good word. You get way more out of that than you would have ever gotten out of that extra half hour of sleep. And that's just across the board. This is just really truly bare bones fundamental application to our lives. So, open your eyes and you shall be satisfied with bread. And of course, the bread here in the spiritual sense would be the bread of life by the Christ. Now let's go back over to our text and find another piece that we can grasp out of it. Jesus, we're in Luke chapter 4, by the way. Go back to Luke chapter 4. And I wanted to express one last time as we're making our way back to Luke chapter 4. It's such a beautiful thing to be able to read about our Savior and his actual lifestyle. The fact that that is really what he did. He would literally stay up all night just to help people, and he did that as an example for us. So we need to take that example and also appreciate the fact that that was something he was willing to do for his people. Now, going back to Luke chapter 4, verse 40. We've already read this now, of course, but let's reread it. And I got a little point to bring to your ears at the end of the verse. So it says that now, when the sun was setting, all that had any that were sick with diverse diseases brought them unto him. Now, watch this. And he laid his hands on every one of them. Now, I just want to share with you right now. That touches me. Not physically, of course. He didn't physically lay hands on me. But reading this, knowing that this is absolute spiritual truth, is just as good as Jesus in the flesh laying his hands on me. Because you stop and think about that now. Why would he do that? Even Peter down the road in the book of Acts just started handing out handkerchiefs, man. You guys remember that story when he was handing out handkerchief? He handed his handkerchief out, and his handkerchief was healing people. And that was like a certain symbol. There was another one when I don't remember it was Peter or Paul, and like the shadow, just walking over him, the shadow was healing people. You guys remember those stories? You remember, I think it was 2 weeks ago now, we were in the book of 2 Kings, and we were talking about Naaman and how when Naaman approached Elisha gave him specific instructions to wash in the Jordan River 7 times. And Naaman's response was, I won't just like wave your hand in the air or something and just take care of it now. Jesus could have done that. In fact, God from the heavens could just like cause a big storm and say, I'm just going to heal everybody right now. That could have been the approach that he took, but Jesus made sure to lay his hands on every one of them. And the only possible thing that I can conclude, because this kind of stuff makes me stop and think, why would he do that? Why would he lay hands on every single person as it's recorded right here? It would have been a whole lot more convenient for him just to, okay, well, you're all healed. All of Capernaum is healed. Just do something like that. Would have been way less time. He took the time. And I think what he's doing is he is showing us that we're worth it. We're worth his time. And we, in turn, need to look at one another as if one another is worth our time. Our brothers and sisters in Christ are worth the time. That having a conversation with somebody, now we were just watching one of them holiday shows, the bishop's wife, and the taxi driver meets the angel, they're just having a good old time, and there's a quote, and he says, what's wrong with America right now? This is back in 1940 something, when things were not as hectic as they are now. But the taxi driver makes a statement, what's wrong with America right now? What's wrong with our people? People that don't know where they're going, and then they're in a rush to get there. And it's like, like you go back and you read the book of Ecclesiastes by Solomon, the whole way he starts is vanity of vanities, all is vanity. I mean, where are we going anyway half the time? And we have a hard time taking the time to have a talk with a stranger about the Son of God, And that really is becoming a big part of the reality of the world that we're living in. Go with me back to Isaiah chapter 43. Isaiah 43. There's another little clue in here that echoes this kind of statement. Isaiah chapter 43 and verse 1. Read with me now. Isaiah, who he must have been the champion of optimism, because he was able to say a lot of amazing things in the midst of political and cultural and societal turmoil. But he says in Isaiah chapter 43 and verse 1, "But now thus saith the Lord that created thee, O Jacob, and he that formed thee, O Israel. Fear not, for I have redeemed thee. I have called thee by name. You are mine." Now, you may be able to pause for a moment there and say, well, he's making a very collective statement here, but I want you to really consider the fact that when God makes a statement like this, there is no reason to minimalize God's capacity to consider each individual by name, because he is infinite, he is eternal, and he considers each of us by name. He knows us individually, and this, even though it is applicable on a collective level, it is also applicable on an individual level. Verse 2, he makes another cool statement there. And you can, this one's free. I'll let you guys take this one for free, okay? You can take this home and really read this one and enjoy it. Verse 2, he says, "When you pass through the waters, I will be with thee. And through the rivers, they shall not overflow thee. And when you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, neither shall the flame kindle upon thee." You guys remember the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego when they were thrown into a fiery furnace? You guys remember that? You remember how burnt they smelt after they came out of the fire? You guys remember that? You guys remember the story? Not a hair was singed, and the smell of fire was not even on them. And you remember what Jesus says about the individual? The hairs on your head are numbered. So if that's not individual, I don't know what is. If he's willing to put that kind of consideration into each individual, now we in turn need to be able to extend opportunity, our time, even if we have to burn the midnight oil. Sometimes you can apply the midnight oil and the burning thereof when it comes to our personal relationship with God Himself, but also it's going to every now and then be the amount of time or the commitment to somebody else. And that is what Jesus was willing to do, even though he had the power to, like I said, just snap his hands and get like a megaphone and just make a statement and have everyone healed. But he showed by example, no, 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 no. Sometimes it's appropriate just to take the time to invest into individuals. Now, the blood of Christ washes away all sins collectively, but the Son of God Himself mediates between each individual and the Father when they submit themselves to Him. That is powerful, beautiful, and wonderful. So I wanted to give that to you tonight, give you something to chew on, and then consider the fact that Jesus lived this way, and by making contact with Him, these people found healing. And of course, by extension, the same thing is extended to us today, except the physical healing is most assuredly secondary, and it is our spiritual healing that he really came here for. And by him shedding his blood, he gives opportunity to wash away all sins. And even for those who have made the commitment, from time to time, we slip and we fall and need the prayers of one another. And so, if you have any need to request such prayers or come forward for the sake of being buried in the waters of baptism to rise up in newness of life, then we invite you to come while we stand and sing. I can hear